Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heads Up, the weekly webcast and podcast of the National Headache Foundation. I'm Dr. Lindsay Weitzel, migraine strategist, founder of the Facebook group Migraine Nation, and chronic daily migraine survivor. I'm super excited to tell you that today's topic is yoga and migraine. I have wanted to do this topic for a very long time, and I'm very lucky to be here today with Adriane Dellorco. Hello, Adriane, how are you?
Hi, Lindsay. I'm so happy to be here, and I've been a big fan of the podcast, and I'm so thrilled that I'm finally a guest on the show, so thank you.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being with us. Adriane is the founder of Yoga for Migraine, which is an awesome yoga practice specifically for people with migraine. She has a website. You can practice with her virtually online, and we will get back to that a little more later. We want to start out by just talking to Adriane about the benefits of yoga when you have migraine. I do yoga for my migraine. Adriane also obviously does it. So let's get into asking some questions. So Adriane, can you just first start out by telling us a little bit about your migraine story?
Right. Yeah, I've been living with migraine for about 13 years and really got diagnosed during my first year of public school teaching, a very intense year for most teachers, and kind of started getting those weekend migraines, you know, and all the stress would build up, and then you just have the weekend and get hit with the migraine for the whole weekend. So that's kind of what started, and I've been on, you know, literally a dozen preventatives since then, and I became chronic at a point when I had just tons of responsibilities. I had my first child. I was still teaching public school full time. I also directed a dance company and performed on the weekend. So I had a lot going on, and got to a point where I was chronic, and finally found a headache specialist that could kind of help me, you know, really find the patterns of what was causing it. And the preventive that really got me out of chronic and into episodic was thankfully the Cephaly device. That was really what helped me the most. And that, you know, enabled me to kind of get my migraines under control. But most importantly, it really gave me the capacity to have my second child, which I was very worried about for a while, that I couldn't, you know, be pregnant and not have my meds. And so that was probably the biggest joy that I, you know, experienced from that. But yeah, last year actually was the first year in almost 10 years that I am not public school teaching. I resigned largely due to migraine, and devoted myself now to teaching and developing yoga for migraine.
That's wonderful. That is a wonderful story. And it's a wonderful story of finding something you can do to help and work with the community after you've developed migraine. I love hearing those stories. So tell us how specifically yoga helped you with your migraine.
Well, I've actually been practicing yoga since I was 13, and since, you know, before I was diagnosed with migraine. So my yoga practice really shifted though once I became more chronic with migraine and really could not sustain the practices I used to do. So I used to do yoga in, you know, very heated studios, very athletic, intense forms of yoga. And then once, you know, my migraines became so frequent that I couldn't sustain that level of intensity and the heat. So part of me wanting to develop yoga for migraine was just for my own search to find something that was going to be healing and not triggering. So yeah, in doing that now, the practice that I feel has helped me the most are more the relaxation-based type yoga practices. So restorative yoga, which we can go into, you know, what these styles are, yin yoga, a meditative practice called yoga nidra, kind of my favorite ones. But in this course of, you know, kind of living most of my life practicing yoga, it's definitely helped overall manage stress, become just more in tune and connected with myself. And in terms of migraine, I've definitely noticed that the more I practice, more consistent I am, the frequency and severity of my migraines has gone down over time. And I feel like yoga really helps me on an emotional level with like being more resilient to just living with migraine and just those ups and downs of, I mean, so there's so many comorbidities with migraine,
Right.
with anxiety and depression. And I think what's nice about yoga, it helps transform all of those things.
Right. So why don't you really quick, you mentioned a couple different types of yoga that you think help you. So why don't you go delve into those specific types of yoga that you find
Yeah.
helpful, not just for yourself, but for some of the other people you work with who have
Yeah.
migraine?
Yeah, so in my classes, there's about 3 different types that I try to include. So one is more of a general, gentle hatha yoga practice where the movements are not intense. You're not really gonna, build up your sweat or get yourself huffing and puffing. So it's more, stretching. I tend to really focus on the upper body and neck where most people with migraine hold a lot of tension. So those practices are great for people when they have, a lower pain day. For a higher pain day, I include restorative yoga, which is yoga that is done with the support of some props. And you can see some in the back here, but they're yoga bolsters, blankets, blocks. And the intent with restorative yoga is to completely relax and really allow the nervous system to rejuvenate with full support of props. So there's just like no effort. It's like, to me, it feels like a spa day in yoga. It's just being totally open and just relaxing and being held in these supportive poses. And then yoga nidra is actually something that I discovered it to be very helpful for any level of chronic pain, because it's a form of yoga practice that it is done completely lying down. So even when, in the midst of, a bad migraine day, you can still be in bed and, listen. It's usually through a guided meditation. So you listen to a recording and it really just helps relax the body and kind of allow your whole being to be full of acceptance and just welcome kind of whatever sensations you're experiencing without creating that kind of fight or flight experience when you do experience pain.
Right. So yoga nidra, I see it as almost more like a meditative practice. It's not so much a movement practice.
Exactly.
And I do think it can be very helpful, especially on a very high pain day. Yeah, I really like how you said that. And you do incorporate all 3 of those types when you teach, correct?
Yeah, and my classes, usually the first half is kind of geared for like the lower pain day. There's, gentle movement. We do neck stretches, cat and cow poses. So there's some more fluid dynamic movement. And then the second half is where we just are more still and have a long time on the floor, lying down. We have eye pillows and we wrap up in blankets and do the yoga nidra meditation.
Okay. So historically, I've always been a little disappointed that there's very little research published in peer-reviewed journals on yoga and migraine. No one has or very few people have looked into whether or not it was helpful. But this year, in fact, just a few months ago, there was a publication in Neurology that showed some benefits of utilizing yoga in addition to your other migraine treatments. And I was just wondering if you could chat about that really quick, because I do believe they used an approach very similar to what you're discussing right now with the mixture of the restorative and the meditative. Am I correct?
Yeah, no, it's very exciting that just came out this year, because like you said, there's very few. There actually are quite a bit of scholarly articles on yoga for other pain conditions, but not migraine yet. So that was exciting. And yeah, they found that the regular yoga practice did contribute not only to about 50% reduction in severity and frequency of migraine, but also 50% less medication that people needed. So that shows it's as effective as, a typical preventive. But yeah, I was impressed with the sequence that they taught people. It was done in India, and they included more of the traditional practices that I think are more that meditative quality. They had taught breath work in every class. They did a long meditative shavasana, which is kind of laying down at the end with meditation and more gentle movement. So I thought what the sequence they created was very comprehensive and soothing for migraine without being too intense or aggressive.
Okay. So I'm just curious, as someone who I'm certified as a yoga teacher. I don't teach in groups anymore. I teach some individuals who have migraine, but I do a lot of the things that I think for a lot of people with migraine, it would be triggers. So I think we're all very diverse, is one of the things I was going to say. So what are some of the specific things that you find trigger you and the people you work with?
Yeah. To help bring some more research into this field, I actually conducted my own survey online just a few months ago, where I got surveys from over 185 migraine patients about their experience with exercise and yoga to really find out, because people, there's a lot of anecdotes, but you don't really have a good sample size. So in what I've interviewed people or surveyed people about, people, first off, in the migraine community, in general, are not getting enough exercise because they don't feel good, they fear getting a migraine. And we do know that exercise is is a strong preventive if you can do it for migraine, which we can't always. And of the favorite types of exercise, yoga was one of the top favorites for people with migraine. So in the survey, people mentioned, maybe a quarter of the people mentioned they've never had a migraine trigger from yoga. So that leaves, it's about 75% of us who have. And the top triggers for people were poses that put strain or pressure on the neck. And those could look like a shoulder stand, where you're laying on your back and you almost kind of flip your legs vertical. And so there can be a lot of strain on the neck. Or even a pose where you're asked to look up at the sky. That's asked a lot in yoga classes. And those things kind of put unnecessary strain on the neck, especially for people who are not as experienced, which most of the people in the survey didn't have a ton of experience with yoga. The other triggers that people mentioned were inversions, which are a common style or a common pose where your head is lower than your heart. And that is, for me, in general, like you said, I don't mind that, but for other people, that if they did a downward facing dog where their hips are in the air and their hands and feet are on the floor, that was an instant migraine. So it is very personal, and it can even depend on the day. If you're having a migraine day, a hot, vigorous yoga class might not work, but if you're feeling good, that might be really nice. So you have to really kind of watch where you are that day and just what your triggers are. And then in terms of the yoga studio itself, people talked about still, bright lights, incense, heat were triggers as well. So now with COVID, people are definitely doing a lot more online, which I think is actually really nice for people with migraine, because they can do it when they feel good at their own schedule, don't have to stress about missing a class or not being able to make it.
I wanted to add to that a personal story, and I have found this in certain people. I think that the heat triggers many people. But then someone like me, if you're someone whose pain has caused you extreme tension, or you have trouble even moving your head or using your upper body in yoga, and that triggers you, I personally find that I almost have to be in a heated room to do yoga. And if it is a day that I'm getting that type of migraine that hates the heat, then I just don't do yoga. So there are a group of people that I see in the migraine population who do need that heat in order to move well. So if you find that you feel you're that kind of person, don't be afraid to try the heat. I always like to tell people that. So to go ahead and tell us about Yoga for Migraine in your website, if you could, and how people
Sure.
can do yoga with you.
Yeah, you can learn more at yogamigraine.com, and that's also my handle on social. So on Instagram, Facebook, at Yoga Migraine. And I definitely probably put the most energy into my Facebook group. So if people wanted to go on Facebook and look for the group at Yoga Migraine, I do put up a lot of free videos and research and opportunities for people to kind of taste what it's like. And then I offer a weekly online yoga for migraine class. It's offered live, but people also can have all the replays from the classes. So some people are, taking the class in Australia and they can't make the time zone, so they just do the replays or they're working. So that's a new offering that we just started this month, and we'll continue. And I think what people have really enjoyed with that is, one, if they can be live, to just have that support. Like, we'll check in and chat before class and check in and see how everyone's doing. So you kind of have that motivation and support from the other people that all get it. But then to have the replays, because a lot of days people don't feel well and they can't make it, or they like the replays. I try to divide it into 2 classes for high pain and low pain days.
That's a great idea. That is such a great idea to have the high pain version and the low pain version. I think that if every kind of exercise had that, our community would be so much happier.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I really do love about yoga for me, is that it is something that I can sustain kind of almost regardless of my pain level, which with regular exercise, it's like you can kind of feel like you're starting and stopping again. And with yoga, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of like a nice gateway movement, opportunity, because it can be as gentle as you need it to be.
Yes. So you're also involved in teaching yoga with Miles for Migraine, and there's some events that people can do yoga with Miles for Migraine with you coming up soon. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, this is a brand new offering for Miles for Migraine. It's the whole month of August. It's called Mindfulness for Migraine series. And I will be teaching August 4th and 11th, and it's all free. There'll also be Tai Chi, mindfulness meditation, art therapy. So this is a really exciting thing that they're offering to help support people in the migraine community. It'll be presented live through live classes, and you can register with Miles for Migraine and just search up the mindfulness link on there. And people will get to, try out lots of different styles of mindfulness practices to help them. And then they'll have the classes available on YouTube when the series is over. And then on August 22nd, I'll be teaching yoga for migraine in one of their virtual education days. So that's a Saturday, and they have great speakers and always give people a little taste of like something experiential to help with their migraine. So yoga for August 22nd.
Awesome. Okay, well, hopefully everyone will tune in. Is there anything you'd like to add on the topic of yoga and migraine before we go today?
Yeah, I just want to encourage people maybe who feel that they're not, fit enough or flexible enough, that yoga truly can be accessible for all levels of fitness, and however, intense your migraine and pain feels. It can be totally done lying down, and you can benefit from poses much more than just, lying down in your bed and, whatever pose you might end up in. So it can really, you can really start wherever you are, and just finding a teacher that can make those accommodations and offer lots of options to make you comfortable is really important.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Adriane, for being with us today. And thank you everyone for joining us on Heads Up. Please join us next week on the weekly webcast and podcast of the National Headache Foundation. Bye, everyone.
Bye.